Today's guest is one of the world's most accomplished scientists. Growing up in a small village in India, he studied under a kerosene lamp.
So I studied in front of a kerosene lamp till I finished my year 7. At that time, it was just part of life.
A teacher saw potential in him and took him into his own home so he could continue his education. That young boy would go on to become a global pioneer in nanotechnology. He would publish more than 1,000 scientific papers and earn some of the highest honors in science.
Professor Jagadish Chennupati from Australia in the field of science, technology and education.
I used to get a lot of rejection letters left, right, center.
Paint me a picture. What did life look like in that village? In this episode, we will explore the journey, the lessons, and the mindset that took him from rural India to the forefront of global science. Professor Chennupati Jagadish. Professor Jagadish, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Deven. It's a pleasure to be with you.
When you look back at that young boy studying under that kerosene lamp, what do you think that would surprise him the most about your life today?
Thanks, Deven. And I never imagined that, I'll be where I am today. And because those who are brought up in small villages in India, and you're only taking a next step, just to go to high school. And then when you finish high school, you go to college. And, afterwards you go to university and then a range of things. So you never, for these sorts of things, you don't really plan for, I want to be at a certain place or anything of that sort. You try to do your best at every stage and with the hope that the doors will open for you for the future.
Let's go back there. Paint me a picture. What did life look like in that village?
So basically, I was good in my primary school up to till I finished my year 7. And so then we didn't have electricity at home. And then I used to study in front of a kerosene lamp. It so happened that when I was 10 years old, my father migrated to even a remote place now which is in Khammam district. And I was originally born in Krishna district of Andhra Pradesh. So now it comes under Telangana. So he's gone to a remote place and bought some lands and tried to develop that one for the benefit of the family. And so then I didn't know, where I'll go for high school because in my village at that time, there was no high school. It so happened that he happened to mention this one to my teachers. And then one of my maths teachers, out of the 2 teachers he's mentioned, he has been his close friends. And then my maths teacher said that, why don't you ask him to come and stay with us? So I lived with my maths teacher in a neighboring village for about 3 years. And I completed my year 10. And then considering studying, staying with a maths teacher who is very, very disciplined or so. So that means, I did very well. But then after finishing my year 10, I moved to a place called Guntur. And so where I did my intermediate. And essentially it is year 11 and 12. Suddenly, you got a freedom and then you go to a new town and then coming from a village and then monthly allowance you are being paid, sent. So in the process, I used to goof around with, hanging around with friends and going to movies and all those things which as a teenager you do. And in the process, I didn't do very well in my year 12. So then that's in those days, the number of engineering colleges in the entire combined state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana now. And used to be about half a dozen of them or so. It used to be extremely competitive to get into engineering. So and that's why I could not get into engineering and my bachelor's degree. So that's how I ended up going and then doing my bachelor's degree in physics, which I was always interested in. And then gone off and then did my master's degree in applied physics electronics from Andhra University. So then, so I used to look for jobs. And then again, it was very difficult because you're not an engineer. As I told you that you need to be, get jobs, you need to be an engineer. For science graduates, it used to be much more challenging as well.
At that stage of your life, what did you think your future would look like?
So basically, I finished this MSc Tech Applied Physics Electronics, and I used to apply for positions in physics. And they used to say that you're not a physicist because you didn't do MSc Pure Physics, though my bachelor's degree was physics. And then I used to apply for engineering, electronics engineering jobs. They used to say that you're not an engineer. And so in the process, neither physicists I was not able to get jobs in physics or engineering. Electronics engineering, though my MSc Tech 3-year course after 3-year BSc was applied physics with lots of electronic subjects which I've studied. So then I didn't have any much choice, but because I was not able to get a job, and then I started looking for, what next? Maybe I'll go and do MTech. And then I moved to Delhi. I was going to various IITs, Indian Institute of Technologies, which are very popular institutions in India. And then I happened to go to Delhi, to IIT Delhi for doing an interview for MTech program. And so it so happened one of the persons who was also at that interview said that he's going and visiting his brother's friend in who is doing PhD in Delhi University. That's how we ended up. I also ended up tagging on to him and then going to Delhi University. That's where I happened to meet one of my MSc classmates, Professor Dr. K. Srinivas. Now, of course, he's a professor, K. Srinivas. And then I asked him, how come you're here? Then he said, oh, he's waiting for the MPhil program to start, and he's applying for MPhil program. So that's how I applied for MPhil program at Delhi University, not knowing whether I'll get into IIT Delhi or not. I could not get into IIT Delhi, though ironically now I'm an honorary professor at IIT Delhi, but at that time I could not get into MTech program. And so then I ended up doing my MPhil and PhD in physics from Delhi University. So it's a sort of, I could not get, see, basically every step of my life has been that, you fail to get into something, you end up getting something else. And that's what happened. And I probably would have never thought of going and then doing MPhil and PhD and other things if I would have got a job as soon as I finished my MSc. If I would have got into engineering, then probably I would have got a job in engineering, then probably I would have not had all these opportunities which I had. So sort of, I sometimes joke about it, I'm a master of failures. So then that's some, in life, we do fail in life. And that's the only thing is that you can learn from your failures and move forward. And with the hope that you can make progress in your life.
I've read that a teacher played a pivotal role in your life. Tell me more about him.
So I had two teachers, and so basically it so happened that my maths teacher happened to be my father's the high school classmate, and so I also had a social science teacher, an English teacher, and then he happened to be not only my teacher, he also happened to be my father's teacher, my math teacher, and then he's a very elder teacher, and then we used to call him Guruji. And so both those teachers really played an important role. And then my father himself used to be a primary school teacher, but then he quit the primary school teaching and then gone off to farming, where I come from a farming family, to be able to support his combined family or so. And so that's a different story. But of course, moving to a remote place and trying to develop some things, farming is never an easy profession to really been very highly successful, though it's sort of just you can make a living, and that's about it, sort of thing, Anyway, so basically I lived with my maths teacher, as I said, for 3 years, and then they treated me like their own kid, and so that's why even now, unfortunately, my maths teacher passed away a couple of years back, and at the age of 89, and then I was in Kyoto at a conference, I came to know, and then I immediately cancelled all my trips and flew back to India. And I was one of the pallbearers for his, for his funeral and a range of things. So I did all the duties which you do along with his, birth son. And so it's sort of, they're like my second family. Even now, every Saturday I call my biological sister, and then also my maths teacher's wife, and also my maths teacher's two daughters every Saturday, because they are my second family, and then they've treated me like their own kid. And in fact, my teacher's wife is admirable in the sense that, my maths teacher was my father's friend. Okay, that's good. I think my maths teacher is helping one of his friends and helping his friend's son. But my maths teacher's wife, she really treated me like her own kid. And in fact, even she used to give me head bath. In those days, there were no shampoos or anything, and used to get some, shampoo nuts. And then we used to crush them and then mix with water, and then it gets one which is going to, clean a lot of bubbles and other things, and wash my, hair and all those things. Though of course I don't have any hair at the moment, and I used to have hair long time back, So it's sort of, that's why I'm so grateful to and that's why even my maths teacher and then my English teacher and social science teachers' families, even now I will keep in touch. In fact, both my maths teacher's wife and then also my English teacher or social science teacher's wife, both are living. And one is in Hyderabad, one is near Vijayawada called Nunna. And whenever I am in that part of the country for a conferences or so, I try to visit both of them, take their blessings and spend, even for an hour or two, I try to do that one because expressing my gratitude is very important to me. Without them and their help, probably today I will be plowing the fields in India, along with my cousins.
Professor, if that teacher wouldn't have entered your life, what do you honestly think your life would look like today?
It's basically, Deven, that, In life, those lots of people help us at various stages of our life. It is important for us to remember them and also express our gratitude to them. Without so many people's help, will not be where we are and whatever the profession we choose to be. I'm so grateful to my parents for trusting me and then supporting me all through my journey, and also my maths teacher and then my English and social science teachers, families, not only teachers and teachers' families also for their support as well. And of course, my sister looked after my parents and my brother-in-law, and then I'm grateful to them as well, because of the fact that I could not be with my parents when at the last stages, and then my sister and brother-in-law looked after them very well. I'm grateful to both of them as well.
Have you ever told him that?
Yes, absolutely. So I've expressed my gratitude to them multiple times. In fact, it so turned out my maths teacher wrote 2 books about me as my favorite student. Of course, they're in the language of Telugu. That's my mother tongue. And by the way, that till I finished my year 12, the one that I studied in Telugu medium. So I only started doing an English medium in my bachelor's degree. So that's sort of itself as a challenge as well. So then anyway, but of course I've expressed, in fact, it so happened that the 6 months before his departure to the heavenly abode, and then I happened to be in India, and he launched that second book. And so then it was really very emotional day for me. And then I couldn't, stop. Tears starts flowing without even me, doing anything, because that's such an emotional day. Generally, students write books about teachers, but teachers writing books about students is very unusual. I'm so grateful. And then, of course, he's, every time, whenever I won any recognitions, and the local newspapers used to mention his name and then saying that impact he has made on me.
Do you think we underestimate how one person could completely change another person's life?
Yes, indeed. And sometimes people, those who made those difference, we also forget about it, which is not a very nice thing as human beings. Yes, anybody, that's a key point, Deven, is that, all of us can make a small difference in other people's lives. So for me, to be honest with you, I've got a lot of recognitions and lots of papers I've published and all those things. But the most enjoyable part of it has been to really see many of the students and postdoctoral fellows and young colleagues and, even visiting students also making a small difference in their lives is the most satisfying thing for me. So anybody can do that one. So that's why all of us, those are where we are today. We are really lucky to be where we are today, and also we have all been where we are because of the generosity of other people. And that is why we should do our best in terms of helping others so that we can open doors for the next generation.
What was the hardest obstacle you had to overcome growing up?
So, of course, there are always obstacles at various stages. For example, the first obstacle was I could not get into engineering. For example, you can say that that's a big failure for me. And then also that when you change from Telugu medium to English medium, and again trying to adapt yourself to those, and be able to do well in those courses and other things is also not an easy one as well. And so then again, an opportunity came when I went to Delhi, and I never imagined that I will be going to Delhi and doing my PhD and other things. And after finishing my PhD, then I was teaching in a Sri Venkateswara College of Delhi University as a lecturer in electronics for about 3 years. During that time, and I was really want to go and gain some international experience. So in those days, there was no computers, no laptops, and there's no, of course, computers means a big mainframe computers in the computers which are filling the big room, not the laptops. There was no internet, there were no emails. We used to get these magazines called Physics Today and IEEE Spectrum, and by C-mail, 6 months late, a January issue used to come in May or June. And in the back of these magazines, they used to have lots of advertisements. And then I used to apply for these positions, which I thought are relevant to me. But the problem is they might have already filled the positions, but you didn't have any information because they never used to give deadlines in those advertisements. So I used to get a lot of rejection letters left, right, center, and then I had more than 300 rejection letters. Before that, I got my first postdoctoral fellowship at Queen's University in Canada. And again, I had to change my field from semiconductor thin films to magnetics, which is a quite different field. And then in order to be able to get this first postdoctoral fellowship, again, Dr. Srinivas, whom I mentioned earlier, who really helped me in terms of being able to even think about applying for this MPhil program and PhD at Delhi University. Happened to go to Queen's University. He suggested a professor's name called David Atherton. And then he said that, he seemed to like people from Delhi, but not he's in his field. But I happened to write to him, and then after 4 or 5 months, he happened to offer me a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship. So I'm so grateful to Professor David Atherton for giving me the opportunity to work with him at Queen's University in a field where I'm not an expert. But he just gave me an opportunity. And so I'm so grateful to him. And unfortunately, he's no more. And these are sometimes, you may get opportunities. It may not be perfect fit for what you think is, something. But then you say that, okay, I got an opportunity. I might as well take it and then see what best I could do. And that's the one which really allowed me to be able to really learn a lot into an entirely new field and be able to make an impact on that one. That has given me the self-confidence. I can get into new areas and be able to make impact. So then that really helped me quite a lot as well. So that way, I'm really lucky. And again, while I was at Queen's University, I never imagined that I would be coming to Australia. And one of the professors, Professor Jim Witten, he unfortunately, who is also no more, and so knew that I'm a semiconductor person working in magnetics. And then he one day came and asked me, Professor Jim Williams is starting a new department of electronic materials engineering at the ANU, and he's looking for some good people who would like to go to Australia. So then again, there was no emails yet, and then he ended up faxing my CV to Jim Williams. And so then after 6 months, I happened to get an offer letter to come to Australia, to the Australian National University, in the Research School of Physics, to work with him for 2 years, with a possibility of extension for 1 more year. So that's how we arrived in Australia with a 2-month-old baby, our daughter, Laya, and then my wife, Vidya, and with a 2-year contract in July 1990. I never imagined that I will be living in Australia for 36 years now, almost, and I'll be working at the ANU for such a long time. So I'm so grateful for the opportunities I had in Australia and at the ANU. And ANU is a great university, and Canberra is a great city to live, and Australia is a great country to live as well. I'm so grateful to various opportunities I had.
You arrived in Australia on a short-term contract. Did you ever imagine you would build your life here?
No, I never imagined. In fact, I came also on a work visa. I was thinking that I will work here for a couple of years and I'll go back to Delhi, because I still had my job in Sri Venkateshwara College and I was allowed to take 5-year leave. So that's why I thought that's what I will do. But then when I was finishing my 2 years here, then Professor Jim Williams said that I want you to stay back, and then we'll create a permanent position for you, and then also we'll sponsor you for a permanent resident visa. So based on his promise, and I resigned for the job in Delhi. And then it so happened that they advertised for a permanent position in a different field in devices. They were trying to bring an expatriate Australian who is a PhD from Caltech, and then assistant professor at Cornell University. Both are top institutions in the US. And because he's got this device expertise, which we didn't have, we're all materials people. And then I also applied for the position. And to my surprise and everybody else's surprise, I ended up getting the position. And so that's how, I started my permanent position, and then also meanwhile got my permanent resident visa. And I built up my research group, and then be able to build up, again, this device expertise and other things. And the thing is, Deven, that, because of the fact that what I was able to do here, and because of the fact that I had an opportunity to work in a different field at Queen's University, because that allowed me to build up my self-confidence, I can get into new areas and be able to make an impact. So that confidence and what I was able to demonstrate when I moved to ANU also allowed my colleagues, Professor Jim Williams and Professor Eric Weigald, and the leadership of the university at that time, of the Research School of Physics, confidence that this guy can do anything. So that's how they ended up giving me that opportunity. I feel very lucky that they've given me this long-term position. But, even now, it's very difficult to get long-term positions at the Australian National University. But even then, at that time, it was very difficult to get long-term positions, where some of the people were waiting for 10, 15 years to get long-term positions. And I was lucky to be able to get that long-term position or a permanent position within 2.5 years of arrival into Australia, and also with all my degrees from India. See, lots of times, when lots of successful Indians, they might have got a PhD degree, whether it's US or UK or Australia, Europe or somewhere. But all my degrees are from India. So that's why I'm so grateful to India for really nurturing me from childhood to adulthood and providing me all the education which I end up having. And also I'm grateful to Australia for providing me the opportunities to be able to demonstrate myself as a scientist.
What was the loneliest moment in your journey?
That's a good question. So the loneliest moment, I never even thought about it. Sometimes when you're in the leadership positions, sometimes also you feel a bit lonely as well. You may find it surprising that why you're in a leadership position and why you feel lonely, but sometimes you're dealing with some challenging issues or challenging problems. So sometimes it becomes a bit more difficult to really share some of those challenges. And in the process, sometimes you can feel lonely as well. But having said that, but I have been lucky enough to have so many confident friends and colleagues with whom I was able to share my excitements or frustrations. But sometimes when you're dealing with some challenging times, you can sometimes feel lonely as well.
What did success cost you? Family, time, health, missed moments?
Yes, of course, these things always happen. That's one of those things, one plays, sort of pays a price for it. And I've been lucky that, I had all the opportunities and people have given me the opportunity to be able to prove myself and be able to do what I've done. But in the process, I can honestly say that, I miss lots of my daughter's birthdays and I miss lots of my daughter's special events at the schools, for example. And these things happen. And so that's something, that's why I tell my younger colleagues and students is to try to maintain the work-life balance. I'm not the right person to really an example in terms of maintaining that work-life balance. I've been very lucky that I've got a wonderful wife, my wife Vidya, who has supported me, and then she could see the passion which I have for what I do for science. And then also with international collaborations, I collaborate with the people from 30 plus countries. So it means I used to travel quite extensively for collaborative visits or for attending conferences and a range of things. And so then she's always supported me. And again, my daughter also has been very understanding that they could see my passion and then they just didn't want to constrain me in any way. That's why I'm so grateful to both of them. And I also, as I told you, that I've also expressed my gratitude to my sister and brother-in-law as well for taking care of my parents as well. One does pay the price. And that is why it is important to look back and then see that, what is a priority for you, what is important for you, and then making sure that you got that work-life balance. And I tell my young colleagues now that, your children's childhood only comes once. Don't miss those opportunities and then try to spend quality time with them despite the enormous amount of pressure which we're all under when we are younger and then we want to prove ourselves. We come into a new country and you want to establish yourself as a new migrant and a range of things. But then I think we need to maintain that balance. And I'm not a great example from that point of view, in all honesty.
For someone who has never heard about nanotechnology, what's the most fascinating thing you could tell for your field?
Basically, first and foremost, what is nanotechnology? Nanotechnology is engineering at the atomic and molecular scale. So as we know that, we can take Lego blocks and then be able to make whatever the shape and the structure which you want to make. Instead of using Lego blocks, we use atoms and molecules to engineer and create nanostructures. Particularly if you take any material, you go to nanoscale, what happens is that, by the way, that 1 nanometer is 1 billionth of a meter. So just to give an idea. So at the nanoscale, the properties of the materials change, and we want to make use of those unique and new properties at the nanoscale in order to be able to make a range of devices like electronics or communication devices or lasers, photodetectors, solar cells, sensors, and batteries, and a range of things you can make. So sometimes people ask me, can you tell me what are the nanotechnology industries which are going to come up? I tell them that we're not going to have a separate nanotechnology industries. Every industry uses nanotechnology. For example, we are using already in electronics, computer chips. Nanotechnology has been used, and today's transistors are the smallest features are about 5 nanometers or so. And that means smaller the devices, you can pack more transistors in a computer chip. That means you can be able to do more functions. You can also make them faster as well. So that's what we are already using in nanotechnology in electronics, for example. In the same way, for sensors, in order to be able to detect a single molecule, say the cancer detection or any other chemical molecule detection for detection of health of the people. For example, we are working on breath sensors. Our breath has got lots of information which we can make use of. For example, we're able to detect diabetes, ketosis, and a range of diseases as well. So we've been using nanotechnology for making a new class of batteries. For example, there's high density batteries which we are using in the electric cars or so, and they're again making use of nanotechnology, for example. So we're using nanotechnology in chemical industry, electronics industry, computing industry, communications industry, health and medical sciences, and including agriculture as well. So really, nanotechnology is everywhere around us.
Tell me a fact about nanotechnology or semiconductors that would genuinely shock most people.
See, in the future, for example, nanotechnology can really help you to be able to look at your health, for example. People can, you can probably make use of them for not shock, but, inspire people, I would say, that basically you can use a targeted drug delivery. Say, for example, whenever you got a cancer, for example, we do the radiotherapy or chemotherapy, and that means you are sending a lot of these chemicals, and then not only they're killing the cancer cells, but also they're having some impact on the healthy cells as well. That is why a lot of side effects and other things. But whereas if you go for the targeted drug delivery, these drugs are only targeting and attaching themselves only to the cancer cells. So thereby you're able to selectively activate them, only kill the cancer cells without having impact in the healthy cells. That means that can have a huge impact in terms of well-being of the people, while also getting rid of the unwanted things like a brain cancer or a range of cancers which we are talking about, for example. Again, we're using nanotechnology, for example, looking at blockages in the arteries in the heart, for example. Again, people are using nanotechnology in order to be able to do that one. So basically, nanotechnology is everywhere, Deven.
What's the technological breakthrough happening right now that most people are overlooking?
Of course, major things are synthetic biology is one of the areas which, you're able to really create biological systems, and the synthetically is something which, rest of the world is working. AI, artificial intelligence, is going to play a huge important role in all aspects of research as well, including some of the inventions can happen much, much faster because of the fact that you're able to use AI, and then that really makes a big difference as well. Again, when you talk about, and I'd say that nanotechnology is everywhere, and AI is also going to be everywhere as well, it's a matter for us to how to make use of it for the benefit of the humanity and the benefit of the planet as well. So that's what we all have to work together in order to be able to make use of the AI much more effectively for benefiting people, while also ensuring that there are no harmful effects. That is where government policies and ethics and morals and all those things come into picture as well.
You have spent decades at the frontier of science. What's something that an average person fundamentally misunderstands about the future?
So the future, because there's, in general, whenever there's a new technology comes, there's always some worry as well. That's normal for human nature. Because, for example, when the computers were coming, and then people were really worried about, how the computers are going to change us, all of us, and all these things. And again, even when the case of the gene technology came, people were worried about gene technology. And then when the nanotechnology came and biotechnology came, people were worried about biotechnology. And when nanotechnology started 25, 30 years back now, and again, people were worried about nanotechnology. We as human beings can make use of any technology positively or negatively. So that is where ethics and morals and also the regulations and other things play an important role to ensure that we are really using any technology for positives need to outweigh the negatives driven on any technology. But the human nature always, the change is always, which is the only thing which is constant. But we're also always worried about whenever the change is taking place. For example, a lot of people are worried about AI and how that's going to impact them and their lives or so. That's where instead of being worried about those technologies, my advice always would be is that let us adopt ourselves. Change is the only thing which is constant in life. Instead of worrying about the change, how do we adopt ourselves? How do we make use of these new technologies in order to be able to live a better quality of life and then also be able to do things much more efficiently as well?
What prediction do you believe most people will completely disagree with?
Because there are lots of things. For example, AI is going to take over everything, and then we all become redundant, and so then all these sorts of things people are worried about. Of course, it's natural people to be worried about these things. That is where we, even the people, those are developing the new technologies, need to behave in a responsible way to ensure that any new technology is not going to be harmful to the human beings or to any creatures on the planet and the planet itself. So that is where the responsibility comes into picture. And that is where I think, people, those are developing any new technology should not only just focus on the financial benefits or otherwise, controlling of the world and the way they want the world to be or so. That is really unhealthy. That is where I think, people have to take responsibility of all these companies, those that are developing AI, and then say that, am I doing it for common good or for the benefit of humanity? Am I doing these things for the harmful things we're doing for humanity and also the environment surrounding us as well? So that is where one thing we need to look at. Responsible development of any technology is very important. That's where also that you get the acceptance and support from public as well.
Australia's investment in research and development has been declining for years. How concerned are you?
I'm very, very concerned about it. And when the rest of the world is really realizing the importance of science and technology and the fields of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and we are really going backwards for the last decade plus or so. And unless otherwise we really start really realizing the importance of R&D investments and change the direction of investment from going backwards to the positive direction or so, and then we need to really move towards at least in the next decade or so, the OECD average. And currently the OECD average of the R&D investments for 2.7% of the GDP, and we're only investing at a 1.69%. We are at the bottom half of the in R&D OECD countries in terms of R&D investment, which is not good for the future of our country, future of our next generation of young Australians. And if you really want to create the right opportunities for them and also address the challenges which we are facing as a society, impacts of climate change, net zero energy transition, and dealing with pandemics, and developing new technologies, and that means we should start investing more in R&D and not less. So one of the challenges for us, Deven, is that there are two problems. One is that the government investment also has been lower than OECD average countries, but the business investment is even worse. And overall OECD average of the business R&D investment is 1.99%. And then our business R&D investment is 0.93%, less than half. So that is not very good for the future of our country. So that is why governments have an important role to play in terms of not only investing in R&D, but also create policies to ensure industry also starts investing in R&D, because we need to have both to take place if you really want to create the right opportunities for the next generation. I'm really, really worried about what type of the opportunities the next generation will have, and will be able to really create the right opportunities for them. So that is why it is time to act is now. Most recently, the government has announced something called a SIRD. SIRD is a strategic examination of the R&D. And that panel, which is led by Robin Denham, the chair of the Tesla board, and then along with three other scientists, have really submitted a report in December to the government. Government has accepted that report, and the title of the report is Ambitious Australia. They looked at the full spectrum, importance of investment, fundamental research, applied research, translation of that applied research into technologies. And so thereby the full spectrum, we're not able to support this one. And also they've recommended various pillars which we need to focus on as well. So that is why it is important for the government to implement this Ambitious Australia report recommendations in full, to ensure that also start investing in R&D to create the right opportunities for the next generation of Australians, right kind of jobs, and also the right quality of life for the next generation as well.
If we continue on this path, what are the consequences?
If we continue in this path of continuing to reducing less and less, so then what's going to happen is that our economy is going to suffer quite significantly. Our productivity will go down. Already we are struggling in terms of productivity of our economy, and the economy is also struggling. So that means we'll have bigger and bigger prices we'll pay, particularly with the climate change or so. And the rest of the world may not be that keen on buying more and more coal from us, for example. Already you can see the impact of that. But again, rest of the world may not be that keen on, just keep on buying our resources as well. So in order to move from the resource-based economy, Deven, to knowledge-based economy, it takes about 2 decades or so. So that is why we need to start acting now, start moving towards knowledge-based economy, and then as a gradual transition, so that we are able to really create the right quality of life for our Australians. So it is absolutely critical, and I think it is time to act is absolutely now. And I'm really worried about what's going to happen to the next generation. And because I feel very lucky that, I came to Australia, as I mentioned, and then Australia, means the quality of life which I had has been fantastic. And then I'm always worried about what type of quality of life, my daughter and then my grandson will have, and everybody else's children and grandchildren will have as well. So that is why it is a responsible thing to do and the right thing to do for our generation to act now, in order to be able to create the right opportunities for them.
What do politicians and business leaders not understand about innovation?
So the challenge is that, the research is a long-term investment. Means lots of times politicians are focusing on the short-term issues, but then because of the fact that our political cycle is a 3-year cycle, so in the process, some of the politicians, when we speak to, they understand the importance of science and technology. But then when they have the priorities come where to invest the funds, and then they're always looking at the short-term issues now rather than the long-term issues. So that is why what we have to do is change that mindset. Some of the challenges which we are facing as a nation, and if we want to address those problems, we need to also start investing in R&D, because R&D in the longer term can really address some of those challenges which we are facing as an economy and as a productivity of the nation or so. So that is why it is important to act now, and start looking at it as like an investment, not as a cost. Sometimes some of the political mindset is that research is a cost, and some of the bureaucrats think that research is a cost. And I keep telling people research is not a cost. Research is an investment. See, when we are really educating our kids, for example, and of course for about 15 years or so, we keep on paying their fees and then look after them and take care of them and all these things, knowing that providing that education is the one which is going to help them in terms of their future and their career or so. In the same way, R&D need to be looked at as an investment of the future of our nation, and we need to start investing now, so thereby we can create a better future for our nation. Resource-based economies, they really do not invest as much in R&D. For example, we dig lots of our minerals and then just export them. That's a very lazy option, I would say, that we should really start really processing some of those minerals here, so thereby we are able to add value, so that can also get the economic benefit from our resources as well. Our resources are only one resource, but that means, in other words, one-off. Means once if we dig and sell, there's nothing left there. And then, of course, in due course of time, and then we may not have, and it may not be cost effective for us to be able to dig and sell. So that is why it is important that business also start really investing in terms of the next generation technologies, as well as also processing technologies. For example, we talk about net zero energy transition. In order to do the net zero energy transition, critical minerals are an important area. And again, if you want to really, even if we got lots of critical minerals like lithium or so, but the thing is that just digging and selling is not going to be very effective or beneficial for our nation. That is why we need to really start investing in terms of processing technologies, industries, so thereby we're able to really export more high value added product rather than the lowest value added product. If you do that, which is digging and selling, is not going to be cost effective for us in the longer term. Again, businesses need to look at this is not as a cost, and then they need to look at it as a long-term investment for the future of their own industry.
You publicly voiced your concerns on the proposed restrictions on international scientific collaboration. Why did you feel strongly enough to speak about it?
So the science is global, Deven, and then that means there are no national boundaries. We need to start working together. Just to give an example, that Australia only produces 3% of the knowledge, global knowledge. In other words, we publish only 3% or 3.5% of the number of publications which we are publishing out of the total number of public papers being published by the global community, for example. So that means 97% of the knowledge is generated in other parts of the world, And by not engaging with the 97% of the knowledge being generated in other parts of the world, we are disadvantaging ourselves, which is not a good position to be in. And again, also the challenges which we are facing, you talk about climate change and net zero energy transition, or the pandemics, and we can only be able to solve these global challenges by working together, but not on our own. No single country or no individual has got solutions to these global problems. That is why we need to work together as a global community, and that really makes a big difference in terms of the future of our country as well, which is absolutely critical. We work together. Working together, we can achieve much more than working on our own. So that is why it is important to work together. I had the pleasure of collaborating with people from 30 plus countries, and in fact 40% of my papers which have been written jointly with my international collaborators. So that makes a big difference in terms of able to enhance the quality of science and the quantity of science which we can produce within the limited resources which we have as well. So it's absolutely international science collaborations in our own national interests. That sometimes governments forget about that one. If we are not really collaborating internationally, and we are not, that means we are really disadvantaging ourselves. So that is why it is important to collaborate with international colleagues.
What breakthrough in the next 20 years will have the biggest impact on humanity?
Predicting the future is always challenging, and then most of the time, whenever we predict anything into the future, either we underestimate or overestimate these things. And my view is that the science and technology is going to play a more and more important role in our society, not only for the improved quality of life and for our people, but also national security and a range of things as well. So that is why it is important we continue to invest in R&D and science and technology. And most importantly, also make our children to realize the importance of STEM fields for the future, for their own careers as well. Because one of the challenges in Australia we are facing is students are not taking advanced mathematics or advanced science subjects because they want to do easy options or so. But that's not a good thing for the future of our nation. So that's why first and foremost it's important we encourage students to really pursue science and technology because that's the future. The second thing is also that, what is it? As I said, look, there are many technologies which we are talking about, whether, we are talking about AI and we talk about gene technology, biotechnology, nanotechnology. And what would happen in the future is all these technologies, instead of being independent of each other, it becomes like an integrated technologies. And that can really make a big difference. And then also that interdisciplinary science is going to play a more and more important role. So whether you talk about interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary science or so, that again can benefit in terms of the humanity by really bringing various disciplines together. So that is why in terms of our education system as well, that this sort of interdisciplinary concepts and then interdisciplinary education and then interdisciplinary skills becomes very important to the future as well.
If a young boy or a girl are watching this today from some part of the world and wondering whether their dreams are too big, what would you like to tell them?
What I tell them is that, the question is that, whether what I would advise for an young boy or a girl anywhere in the world, what I advise, I say that, first and foremost, believe in yourself. Self-belief is the most important thing in life. Very, very important, whether they are in a small village in any part of the world, and believe in yourself. Everything is possible in life. And again, work hard and also work smart. And also not only believing in yourself and also persevere with whatever you've got. Resilience is very important in life. And whatever we do, and there will always be failures in life, but learn from their failures and then move forward with the positivity and with optimism, so that you can achieve whatever the goal you set for yourself. Try to aim for big, and then if you really set a big goals, and even if you achieve half of that big goal, you achieve much more, and so that you're able to make use of your full potential for your own benefit and also benefit of the society as well. So self-belief and persistence and perseverance and then resilience are absolutely critical in order to be able to succeed in life.
Professor, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks very much, Deven. It was good talking to you, and good luck to you and to your efforts as well. Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning.